It was a warm afternoon, and Jamal was walking home from school, his backpack bouncing with every step. He had just finished a long day of classes and was looking forward to relaxing at home. As he walked down the street, he noticed something unusual: a woman sitting on the sidewalk, holding her belly with a pained expression on her face. She looked to be in her late 20s, and although it was clear she was struggling, there was something calm about her demeanor. Jamal slowed his pace, unsure of what to do. His heart sank when he realized the woman was pregnant. She seemed to be in discomfort, and something told him that it wasn't just a regular ache. "Are you okay, Mom?" Jamal asked, stopping a few feet away. His voice was kind, but there was a hint of concern in it. The woman looked up at him, her face showing signs of exhaustion and worry. She gave a small nod. "I'm fine. Just need to rest for a minute," she said softly, her voice shaky. But Jamal could tell something wasn't right. The way she kept clutching her stomach made him uneasy. "Are you sure?" Jamal asked again, his instincts kicking in. "Maybe I should call someone for you." The woman hesitated for a moment, looking around as if considering her options. "No, I don't want to be a bother," she finally said, trying to smile but failing. Her smile faded quickly as another wave of pain seemed to hit her. Jamal didn't know what to do. He was just a teenager. What could he possibly do to help? But seeing her so vulnerable, sitting on the sidewalk all alone, made him feel like he couldn't just walk away. "Okay, well, I think I should call an ambulance just to make sure everything's okay," Jamal said, pulling out his phone. The woman seemed to hesitate, but then she nodded slowly. "All right," she said, almost as if she was too tired to argue anymore. Jamal quickly dialed 911, explaining the situation and giving them his location. The dispatcher on the other end assured him that help was on the way and told him to stay with the woman until the paramedics arrived. He turned back to the woman. "Help is coming. You just need to stay calm, all right? Everything will be fine." She gave him a grateful smile, but Jamal could tell she was still in pain. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I don't have anyone around here. I'm all alone." Jamal was taken aback by her words. He wasn't sure what to say. All he knew was that she needed help, and he was determined to stay by her side until the ambulance arrived. As the minutes passed, Jamal stayed close to her, offering reassuring words and trying his best to comfort her. He had no idea what was happening, but he could see that the woman was struggling, and he wasn't going to leave her alone. There was something about the situation that felt urgent, but Jamal couldn't yet understand why. As Jamal waited with the woman, he could see that time seemed to slow down. It was a warm day, but the air around them felt thick, almost like a sense of something big was about to happen. He kept glancing at his phone, checking for updates from the 911 dispatcher. The paramedics were on their way, but it felt like they were taking forever. Jamal looked back at the woman, who was now gripping her belly tightly. "Are you sure you're okay?" Jamal asked again, his voice filled with concern. The woman, who had been trying to remain calm, winced slightly and nodded. "Yeah, I'm just a little uncomfortable," she said, though her face was starting to show signs of pain. "I think the baby's just moving around too much." Jamal didn't know much about pregnancy, but he could tell that the situation wasn't right. The woman was sweating now, her breaths coming in short bursts. Something was happening, and he had a growing feeling that it wasn't just a simple case of discomfort. "Are you sure it's just the baby moving?" Jamal asked gently, trying to hide his growing worry. "It seems like you're in a lot of pain." The woman didn't answer right away. She took a deep breath, then looked at him with a tired expression. "Actually, I think I'm going into labor," she admitted, her voice shaking. "I didn't think it would happen so soon. I'm only 32 weeks along." Jamal's heart skipped a beat. He had heard of early labor, but he didn't know much about it. Was this normal? Was she in danger? 100 questions ran through his mind. All he could think of was that she needed help, and fast. I'm going to call 911 again, Jamal said, already reaching for his phone. He dialed the number again, but this time, his hands were shaking. He felt the pressure building inside him. He wasn't just waiting for an ambulance anymore. He was now part of something bigger, something he couldn't control. The dispatcher answered quickly. 911. What's your emergency? I've got a woman here, and I think she's going into labor early, Jamal said, his voice more urgent now. She's 32 weeks pregnant. Is there anything I can do to help? The dispatcher responded calmly, trying to keep Jamal from panicking. Stay with her and keep her as comfortable as possible. If she's in pain, try to keep her calm and breathing slowly. The ambulance is on its way. Do you have any medical training? Jamal shook his head. No, I don't. But I'm staying with her. Please hurry. He turned to the woman again, who was now breathing a bit more quickly, her face pale. It's okay. Help's on the way, Jamal said, though his words felt empty to him. He wasn't sure if he believed them himself. The woman nodded weakly but didn't say anything. Her focus was entirely on the pain she was feeling, and Jamal could see how much it was taking out of her. He felt a wave of helplessness wash over him. What if he couldn't do enough? What if something went wrong? But Jamal wasn't about to leave her alone. He wasn't going anywhere. He knelt down beside her, offering what little comfort he could. You're doing great, he said, though his voice shook. Just breathe, okay? You're not alone. The seconds felt like minutes, and the minutes felt like hours as Jamal stayed by the woman's side. The air was thick with tension, and he could hear her soft, uneven breathing. He had called 911 again, and the dispatcher had assured him that help was on the way. But what if they didn't get there in time? What if something went wrong? The woman, who had been trying to stay calm, suddenly let out a sharp gasp. Jamal's heart jumped in his chest. She gripped her belly tightly, her face contorting in pain. I think it's really happening now, she said, her voice shaky. The baby's coming, and it's coming fast. Jamal could hardly believe what he was hearing. The woman was in labor, and it wasn't going to be a long wait. He didn't know what to do. His mind raced, and his thoughts felt scattered. This was nothing like the lessons he had seen on TV or in school. He wasn't prepared for this, but he had no choice but to stay calm and help her. Okay, just breathe. Focus on your breathing, Jamal said, trying to sound confident. He wasn't sure if his words were helping, but he had to try. He gently placed a hand on her shoulder, offering what little comfort he could. I'm here with you. Everything's going to be okay. The woman nodded, but her face twisted again in pain as another contraction hit her. Her breathing grew faster, and Jamal could see the sweat on her forehead. She was clearly struggling to stay focused, and the intensity of the pain was evident in her eyes. Jamal knew that the situation was serious, but he didn't know what more he could do. Stay calm, Jamal whispered, trying to keep his own voice steady. Keep breathing, in and out. The ambulance is on the way. I don't think I can wait much longer, she gasped, her voice trembling with fear. I need to push. Jamal's heart raced. He had no idea what he was doing. His training had been basic. He had learned a few things in health class, but nothing like this. How was he supposed to help her through something so huge? The baby wasn't waiting for anyone. Okay, just take it slow, Jamal said, his own voice betraying his panic. Just focus on your breathing. The ambulance will be here soon. You can do this. He felt so helpless. He didn't know what he was supposed to do. But in that moment, all he could do was stay by her side, offering whatever support he could. The woman, now breathing deeply, squeezed her eyes shut as another contraction hit. Jamal didn't know what was coming next, but he knew he couldn't leave her. This was real. She was giving birth, and he had to be there for her. As the pain intensified, Jamal's mind raced. He couldn't imagine how she was feeling. All he could do was try to keep her calm, just as he had been told to do. He kept reassuring her, though his words felt small against the growing intensity of the situation. "You're doing great. You're so strong," Jamal said softly, even though he wasn't sure if she could hear him over the pain. "Just a little longer. You've got this." Jamal tried to keep the panic from taking over. He couldn't let her see how frightened he was. She was already scared enough. All he could do was stay by her side and hope that the ambulance would arrive soon. The pain in the woman's face seemed to grow stronger with every passing second. Jamal could see her struggling to breathe, each breath coming in short, fast bursts. The baby was coming, and the situation was more serious than he had ever imagined. Jamal's heart pounded in his chest as he looked around, hoping to see the lights of the ambulance coming down the street. But there was nothing. Only the distant sounds of traffic and the hum of the busy city. He felt helpless. He was just a teenager, not a doctor, not someone who had ever been in this kind of situation. All he knew was what he had learned in school, which now felt useless. But the woman needed help now, and there was no time to wait for the paramedics. "Hang in there," Jamal said, his voice shaky. "The ambulance is coming. You just need to breathe." "You're doing great." She nodded, but Jamal could see the fear in her eyes. The pain was too much for her to handle, and she squeezed her eyes shut, trying to focus through the waves of contractions. Jamal felt his hands start to sweat. What could he do? What if something went wrong? He wished he could do more, but he didn't know how. His phone buzzed in his pocket. It was the 911 dispatcher. "Jamal, are you still with the woman?" the dispatcher asked, sounding calm but serious. "Yes," Jamal replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "She's in labor, and it's happening fast. I don't know what to do. The baby's coming soon." "All right, stay with her," the dispatcher instructed. "Don't try to deliver the baby yourself unless you have to. Keep her calm. Keep her breathing. The ambulance is only a few minutes away, but if things are moving too fast, we might need to help you guide her through it." Jamal's heart raced even faster. He didn't want to be the one to deliver the baby. He wasn't prepared for this, but the woman was in no shape to move, and there was no time to waste. The dispatcher kept talking, giving him step-by-step instructions, though Jamal's mind was spinning. He was trying to listen and focus, but the situation was overwhelming. "Okay," Jamal said, trying to take control of his nerves. "I'm here with her. She's in a lot of pain. What do I do next?" The dispatcher paused for a moment before speaking again. "If she feels the urge to push, try to encourage her to take slow, deep breaths. Don't rush. It's important that she doesn't push too hard too soon." Jamal repeated the instructions in his head, but the woman's pain was growing worse, and it was clear that the baby was coming faster than anyone expected. He glanced around again, hoping for some kind of miracle. He didn't know how much longer he could keep her calm. "Can you do anything to help me?" the woman asked between breaths. Her voice was filled with fear, and Jamal could hear the desperation in her words. "Please, I need help." Jamal swallowed hard. "I'm here," he said, his voice steady despite the panic inside. "You're not alone. I'm right here. Just breathe with me. In and out." The woman nodded, but Jamal could tell it was getting harder for her. He couldn't believe how fast everything was happening. His mind raced, and all he could do was try his best to follow the dispatcher's instructions. The pain on the woman's face was growing more intense with every passing moment. Jamal could hear her breathing faster, each gasp followed by a long exhale. She was trying to stay calm, but it was clear that she was struggling. Jamal felt his own heart race, his palms sweating. He wasn't sure how much longer he could keep this up. It seemed like the ambulance should have arrived by now, but there was no sign of it. "Just breathe," Jamal repeated, his voice shaky. He didn't know if it was helping, but he kept saying the words. "You're doing great. Stay calm." The woman squeezed her eyes shut and nodded, though her face twisted in pain again. She looked up at Jamal, her expression softening for a moment, as if trying to focus on something other than the overwhelming contractions. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice weak but full of gratitude. You're the first person to stop and help me. Most people just walk by." Jamal didn't know what to say. He wasn't used to hearing something like that. He had always tried to be helpful, but he never imagined that his simple act of kindness would be the only thing standing between the woman and total despair. "It's no problem," Jamal said, trying to sound reassuring. "I'm just glad I was here." He felt awkward, unsure of how to comfort her further. What could he say? His only concern was making sure she was okay. But right now, there was only so much he could do. "Where's your family?" Jamal asked, wanting to distract her a little from the pain. "Do you have anyone with you?" The woman hesitated before answering, her breath coming in short gasps. "No," she said softly. "I'm all alone. I don't have any family here. I'm just trying to make it on my own." Jamal could see the sadness in her eyes, mixed with the pain she was already feeling. He felt a wave of sympathy for her. He had no idea what it was like to be so far from home, with no one to lean on. His family was his anchor, always there when he needed them. But this woman was on her own, facing one of the hardest moments of her life, with no one to help her, but a teenager who was just trying to figure it out as he went along. "That's rough," Jamal said quietly, his voice filled with empathy. "I'm sure it's tough doing everything on your own." The woman gave him a small, pained smile. "It's not easy, but I'm doing my best. I just didn't expect this. I wasn't ready for it yet." Jamal nodded, not really knowing what to say. But he felt a connection with her. Here she was, in the most vulnerable moment of her life, and yet she was still trying to be strong. It made Jamal respect her more than he could put into words. "Well, you're doing great," Jamal said, giving her an encouraging smile. "You're stronger than you know." The woman's eyes softened, and for a brief moment, the pain seemed to fade just enough for her to meet Jamal's gaze. "Thank you," she said again, her voice barely above a whisper. Jamal didn't know what the future held, but right then he knew one thing for sure. He wasn't going anywhere. He was going to stay by her side, no matter how scary or uncertain it was. Jamal could see that the woman was reaching her limit. The pain was becoming unbearable, and he was starting to feel the weight of the situation pressing on him. She had been struggling with each contraction, and now her breathing was quick and shallow. "I can't do this alone," she said through clenched teeth, her face pale. "I need help." Jamal's heart pounded in his chest. He had no idea what to do. His mind was racing, and the instructions from the dispatcher seemed a world away. The woman squeezed her eyes shut again, and Jamal knew that she was at a breaking point. "Just breathe," Jamal said again, though his own voice was shaky. He couldn't even keep his own nerves in check, let alone help her. "You're so strong. You've got this." But the woman was no longer listening. Her body was already preparing for the next stage. She let out another sharp cry as the next contraction hit, and Jamal could see it. Her body was pushing without her even having to try. It was happening. The baby was coming, and Jamal was the only one there to help. "Okay, just breathe slowly," Jamal urged, though his voice was strained. "We're almost there. Just a little longer." The woman gasped again, and Jamal could see her preparing for the next push. She gripped his hand tightly, her face contorted with pain, but Jamal knew she needed to be calm. The pressure was building, and he could feel the tension in her body. "I'm here," Jamal said softly, trying to keep her focused. "You're not alone. You're almost there." For what felt like an eternity, the woman pushed, each wave of pain making her tremble. Jamal wasn't sure what was happening, but he was doing everything he could to keep her calm. Finally, there was a cry. The sound of it hit Jamal like a wave of relief, and for the first time since this all began, he could breathe. The baby was here. The woman's labor had come to an end. Jamal looked at the tiny, squirming baby in her arms, tears of relief filling his eyes. It was hard to believe that this moment had just happened. One moment, the woman had been in pain, and now there was new life in her arms. The woman looked up at him, her eyes filled with both exhaustion and gratitude. "You did it," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You helped me. Thank you." Jamal couldn't speak. His words felt too small for the moment, too insignificant to match the enormity of what had just happened. But he smiled, feeling a deep sense of pride. He had helped bring this child into the world, and he would never forget this moment. Jamal sat back on his heels, his body numb with shock and relief. The woman, exhausted but relieved, gently cradled her newborn baby, her hands trembling as she held the tiny life against her chest. Jamal couldn't believe what had just happened. He had been part of something so incredible, and yet he felt so small in the face of it. He glanced down the street again, but there was still no sign of the ambulance. Time seemed to stretch on forever. It had been so long since he first called 911, and the uncertainty of it all was starting to get to him. "Help's coming," Jamal whispered to the woman, though he wasn't sure if she could even hear him anymore. She was so focused on her baby, gazing down at the tiny face with love and awe. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Jamal heard the sound of sirens in the distance. The sound grew louder and louder, and soon the flashing lights of an ambulance appeared at the end of the block. Jamal's heart leaped in his chest. "They're here," he breathed, relief flooding over him. The paramedics quickly pulled up to the curb, their blue uniforms a blur of movement as they rushed to the scene. A team of paramedics sprang into action, taking over immediately. One of them approached the woman and her baby, checking for signs of distress. Another began to assess the situation, checking the woman's vitals. Jamal stepped back, feeling a strange mix of emotions. He had done all he could, but now it was up to the professionals to make sure everything was okay. The paramedics worked quickly, their experience showing as they reassured the woman, giving her instructions in calm, practiced tones. Jamal could see the relief on the woman's face as she let herself be taken care of. For the first time, she seemed to relax, allowing the paramedics to handle the situation. "Thank you," the woman said again, her voice still shaky with emotion. She looked at Jamal, tears welling up in her eyes. "I don't know what I would have done without you." Jamal smiled, feeling his chest swell with pride. "I'm just glad I was here." The paramedics quickly wrapped the baby in a soft blanket and handed the newborn to the woman. As they began to prepare for transport, Jamal watched them, feeling an overwhelming sense of gratitude for the woman's trust. She had needed help, and Jamal had been there. The woman gave him one last look, a smile of gratitude and relief on her face. "You saved us both today," she said softly. Jamal nodded, his heart full. As the ambulance doors closed and the paramedics drove away, he stood there, staring after them, knowing that this day would stay with him forever. The ambulance sped away, leaving Jamal standing on the sidewalk, his legs still shaky from the intense experience. He watched until the flashing lights disappeared around the corner. A strange mix of emotions washed over him: relief, pride, and a deep sense of awe at what had just happened. He had helped bring a life into the world, a tiny baby that had been in so much hurry to arrive. And now it was safe in the arms of its mother. For a moment, Jamal stood frozen in place, taking it all in. He had never expected his afternoon walk home from school to turn into something so extraordinary. He had simply wanted to help a stranger in need, and now he had been part of something bigger than himself. He hadn't planned to be involved in a birth, let alone assist in delivering a baby, but somehow he had done it. And as hard as it had felt right. He had helped her. He had helped them both. Jamal pulled his phone out of his pocket and dialed his mom's number, needing to talk to someone after everything that had happened. "Hey, Mom," he said when she answered, his voice a little shaky. "Jamal, what's wrong? You sound upset. Are you okay?" "I'm fine, Mom," Jamal reassured her. "It's just something crazy happened today. I helped deliver a baby." There was a pause on the other end. "What? You? What?" Jamal chuckled a little, despite himself. "I know. It's crazy, but I was walking home, and I saw this woman in pain on the sidewalk. I didn't know what to do at first, but then she went into labor, and I just stayed with her. I called 911, but the ambulance didn't make it in time. So I helped." His mother gasped. "Oh my God, Jamal. That's amazing. You helped bring a life into the world. I'm so proud of you." Jamal smiled at her words, though he was still a little stunned by everything. "It was a lot more intense than I thought it would be. But I'm glad I was there. I don't think anyone else would have helped her." "You're right," his mom said softly. "You were meant to be there, Jamal. Sometimes we don't know why we end up in certain situations, but it's clear that you were meant to help her today." Jamal leaned against the nearby lamppost, his thoughts spinning. He never expected this kind of thing to happen to him, but there he was, with a new appreciation for life. He had always believed in doing what was right, but now he understood it on a deeper level. Sometimes life threw challenges at you, and you had to rise to meet them, even if you weren't ready. As Jamal continued to talk to his mom, he thought about the woman and her baby. He had seen so much fear in her eyes, but by the time the paramedics arrived, that fear had started to fade. She was holding her baby, safe and sound, and that was all that mattered. He knew he would never forget today. It would stay with him for the rest of his life, and no matter where he went from here, he would always remember how a single act of kindness had led to one of the most amazing experiences of his life. The days after the baby's birth were a blur for Jamal. He had gone back to his regular routine, back to school and his usual activities, but something felt different. He couldn't stop thinking about the woman he had helped, her face, her pain, and the moment the baby was born. It kept replaying in his mind. It had been a life-changing experience, and he couldn't shake the feeling that he had done something truly significant that day. Jamal had always been the type to help others when he could. Whether it was helping a friend with schoolwork or lending a hand to someone in need, he had always believed in doing good. But that moment, the moment he had helped bring a child into the world, had changed him. It had shown him how precious life really was, and how fragile it could be. One second, the woman had been in pain, uncertain about the future, and the next second, she was holding her baby in her arms, full of relief and hope. A few days after the birth, Jamal received a message. It was from the woman he had helped. She had left a number for him to contact her, and now she was reaching out to thank him again. "Jamal," the message began, "I just wanted to say thank you again for everything. You have no idea how much it meant to me that you were there. I'll never forget that you stayed with me when I needed someone most. You are an amazing person, and I'm so grateful." Jamal smiled as he read the message. He didn't expect anything in return for helping her. He had done what felt right, what anyone would do in his place. But hearing her words made him realize just how much of an impact his actions had made. He had helped her, and in doing so, he had become a part of her story, a part of her child's story. He decided to reply, simply, "I'm so glad I could help. I'm just happy everything turned out okay for you and the baby. Take care." The next week, Jamal received another message. This time, it was a picture of the baby, a little girl with big eyes and a tiny hand reaching up to her mother. The woman thanked him again, saying her baby was healthy and happy, and that she couldn't have done it without him. Jamal stared at the photo, a smile spreading across his face. The baby was beautiful, and she had a future ahead of her, a future that Jamal had been a part of creating. He didn't know what had led him to that moment, why he had been the one to help her, but he was grateful that he had been there. As the weeks went by, Jamal continued with his life, but a part of him stayed connected to that day. He knew that he had made a difference, and it gave him a new sense of purpose. He understood now that sometimes the smallest acts could have the greatest impact. He had changed someone's life that day, and in return, he felt like his own life had changed as well. Jamal would never forget the woman or the baby. They had shown him the power of kindness, and he carried that lesson with him every day.